I'm Eve Lyon, Recovery Navigator for CareerSource Research Coast. Welcome to St. Lucie Recovery Works, an initiative supported by the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. In an effort to connect the social service and treatment service providers and the judicial and law enforcement systems to the workforce development community, I invite guests each month for conversations on resources that are available in our community and success stories that result from dedicated and compassionate service providers. Being a victim of a crime can be a very difficult and stressful experience. There can be a wide range of after effects to a trauma. One person may experience many of the effects, a few, or none at all. Not everyone has the same reaction. In some people, the reaction may be delayed days, weeks, or even months. Some victims may think they're going crazy when they're having a normal reaction to an abnormal event. Getting back to normal can be a difficult process after a personal experience of this kind, especially for victims of violent crimes. Learning to understand and feel more at ease with the intense feelings can help victims better cope with what they experienced. It is important to note that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We are fortunate to have an effective and dedicated victim assistance program at the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office. They provide crisis intervention to victims of all violent crime, including robbery, domestic violence, battery, and homicide. The program is staffed by specially trained civilian members, and I am honored to have two members of the team with me here tonight to discuss their roles and the very important support services they provide to people in their darkest hour. I'd like to welcome Lissette and Solange Dorsainvil, both victim advocates. Solange, can you tell us about your victim assistance program?
Good evening, Eve. I would like to thank you for allowing me to share this great opportunity.
We're privileged to have you.
I'm excited to be here, a little bit nervous. Our victim assistance program, it all started in the mid-90s with two victim advocates. Today, we have three victim advocate positions. We have a Creole speaker, which is me, as well as a Spanish speaker to represent our diverse community. Our main goal is to assist law enforcement with cases involving victims who are in crisis and who need support services. Our unit is on call 24/7 7 days a week. We have two advocates who works out of the Sheriff's Office that is located on Midway Road and one at the Fort Pierce Downtown Courthouse.
I know you accept walk-ins and people can find you through your website?
Yes, that is Eve.
So can you tell us what type of calls that you actually respond to?
Well, Eve, we respond to homicides, drug overdose death, domestic violent calls, suicide, just about everything with exception of sexual assault. The sexual assault cases are handled by the state attorney office advocates. Honestly, I would say 90% of our caseload is domestic violence and 10% would be everything else.
So what are the type of services that your program provides?
So, Eve, when we meet with victims on scene, it could be stressful and heartbreaking at the same time. We provide immediate crisis intervention. We assess every situation as each situation is unique. Everyone is different.
Yes.
For example, homicide scenes, we help with death notifications to family members and friends. We make referrals to grief support, bereavement services. We also assist with victims compensation program. That's a program which is a fund through the Florida Office of the Attorney General that is created to serve victims of crime. Eligible victims can qualify for assistance with funeral and burial expenses, mental health counseling services, and out-of-pocket expenses related to the crime. Another example would be responding to a drug overdose call. We would help the family of the deceased with referrals to organizations like Right Life that provide an array of services, which I think is a vital resource to have. As I mentioned earlier, domestic violence is our biggest caseload, so Liz will talk about that in a little bit.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So it is significant to acknowledge that family members who experience the loss of a loved one also, that's not a crime per se, right, but it certainly is a time when they definitely would benefit from the kind of support that you have available to them. And then I want to jump back for a minute to that resources, the financial resources that you talked about. We want to clarify that they're not just available to everybody, that there is a process that somebody has to go through to find out about eligibility, but you can help guide them.
Yes, we facilitate the paperwork and we go ahead and walk them through the process, but we don't determine eligibility. The victim compensation office, they determine the eligibility.
Right, yeah.
We walk them through that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so Now we're going to go to Lissette. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
Oh my God, we're blessed to have you. So who are the victims of domestic violence?
So Eve, anyone could become a victim of domestic violence. It can happen in any relationship, regardless of your ethnicity, your income level, your religion, your level of education, even your sexual orientation. So having said that, I just want to explain that when an arrest is made in a domestic violence case, keeping in mind that that can also include child abuse, elder abuse, or dating violence, advocates either respond to the scene or they follow up with the victim shortly after. Advocates try to meet that victim where they are, meaning in their specific situation. So for those that are ready and want to get out, we assist them with petitions for injunctions, which are restraining orders. We help them with safety planning. We might make a referral to Safe Space, which is the only domestic violence shelter on the Treasure Coast. We also do court accompaniment. We work closely with other agencies who can provide additional services. Two that I want to mention are the Treasure Coast Food Bank.
Okay.
Yes, they're a huge help to our victims. They provide us with emergency food, diapers, toiletries, items. And the second agency that I want to mention is SILO, which stands for Coalition for Independent Living Options. We make plenty of referrals to this organization who offer an array of services to crime victims with disabilities. And as Solange mentioned earlier, we would also help victims of domestic violence file for that victim's compensation for things like hospital bills, loss of wages, mental health services as a result of the domestic violence.
That's amazing. I don't think the average person knows that there are these resources available. You know, driving here this evening, it occurred to me that you do all of this wonderful work locally, but our listeners can live stream right now. And so if somebody is listening from outside of our area, where would you think that they should go? I think about 211 as a resource because it's available all over the country. And if somebody either goes to 211.org or dials 211 on their phone, they would get connected to some resources through 211. 211 doesn't provide the service, but they will find the local resource available.
211 is a great resource to have. And in a little bit, we want to share some more information, vital numbers that are important for victims of abuse. Okay.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say that on the flip side, you have victims that are not ready to leave. Okay.
Yes.
And in cases as such, our goal is to leave an open door. So when they are ready, they have someone who they can call directly. We also help with safety planning in those type of cases. And as you know, statistics tell us that it takes an average of 7 attempts for a survivor to leave their abuser and stay separated for good. I think that we need to keep that in mind when we're working with victims of domestic violence because it's not always as easy as it sounds.
Also, I mean, this is in some cases a loved one.
Yes.
So someone feels that connection and they don't want to see them, be convicted of a crime. Right. And so
you hear it all the time, I love them. I just want them to stop hurting me.
Correct. Yeah. So
or if you can get them help, they need
So do you continue to reach out or do you just sort of give them information and then wait for them to connect with you when they're ready?
Yes, we wait for them to connect with us when they are ready. We don't necessarily know the situation that it could be, that they can be in. So we don't want to make those phone calls to their cell phone numbers where it could cause, additional problems for them. So we're very careful about that.
Yes.
They know that we're available and whenever they are ready, they can reach out.
I just have to pause for a second to acknowledge the level of your expertise. And I know you've both been doing this for a very long time.
Yes.
But it's apparent that you really see the big picture and have just so much compassion to be able to meet people where they're at.
Yes.
And I think that's the really, really important part.
Yes.
And I know that, we talked about these resources. And so I would assume that networking is a very important part of this for you to be able to stay on top of what resources are available in the community.
I would say that about 90% of doing this job entails networking with community agencies and knowing what's available to you as an advocate.
Yes, and staying up to date with it because it changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if any of you resources are out there listening to us this evening, please reach out to this team and let them know that you have services that are available, people that are in such vulnerable situations. And it's a safety issue. It's not even just, it's trauma, it's emotional, but in so many cases, it's safety as well.
Yes.
All right. What are the different types of abuse? I guess we have to talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about the most common types. We have the physical, which obviously includes the hitting, the punching, kicking, even strangling. We have sexual abuse, and that's the unwanted touching or sexual activity. We also have emotional and psychological abuse, and that can include name calling. It could include embarrassing someone in public, threatening to harm the victim or the victim's family, even their pets, and stalking. And lastly, we have economic abuse, and that's when a victim has no access to economic resources, leaving them totally dependent on the batterer for everything.
So again, if somebody's listening and experiencing some of these horrible situations, or if you have a friend or a family member and you're observing this, we'll talk in a few minutes about ways to respond and support somebody going through this, but please know it's not normal. It's not right, and there is help available. So I just want to keep saying that over and over again. Some people, can be generational. It can be a cycle of life, and we have to break that cycle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We just want people to know there are resources. So how do victims access these different types of services?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So when a victim calls 911 and a police report is generated, that victim is given a victim's rights brochure. And that brochure includes a case number along with an overview of the criminal justice process and victims' rights within that process. That brochure includes our direct phone numbers as well and contact information for other agencies that can assist as well. Community members who have questions or need information can call our main phone number, and that number, I'll give you a second to get your pen and paper.
Oh, you're good. Have you done this before?
Very long time ago.
Okay.
That number is 772-462-7300, and you can ask for victim assistance. We also have information listed on the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office website, and that is www.stluciesheriff, that's STLUCIESHERIFF.com.
Okay, so that's 772-462-7300 or stluciesheriff.com.
Correct.
I know we also talked about that you do maintain very close working relationships with the detectives.
We do.
And you have access to the law enforcement reports as well. So those are other ways that you learn about people that might have needs.
We work under the Criminal Investigations Division, and as we had spoken earlier, all the domestic violence reports that are generated through the office, the victim advocates get those reports. Okay, and make contact with those victims to see where they are in the process. In addition to that, because we work closely with the detectives, they also come to us for assistance with certain victims that they might be working with. So we get a lot of referrals that way as well.
And again, as we said earlier, that outreach may not take at that moment. The person just might not be ready.
That's right.
But you're always there for them.
Yes.
Yeah. So how can a friend or family support somebody who is experiencing trauma?
That's a great question. I personally would tell them to listen in a respectful manner and to be non-judgmental. Mm-hmm. Try to avoid phrases like, you need to calm down or stop crying.
Yep.
Let them vent. Help them to find resources in their area. Also encourage them to get rest, do things that make them feel good. That could be exercising for some, going for a walk, reading a book. And as a friend or a family member, we should respect the person's need to be alone at times. Don't take it personally.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, discourage negative coping strategies like drinking or doing drugs. That's a big one.
Yeah. Last night I attended, I'm a member of the Treasure Coast Opioid Task Force, and we had an opioid symposium last night in the community, and we had a keynote speaker, Ryan Leaf, who is a former NFL first round quarterback pick, an amazing player initially. As a 21-year-old, earned $5 million a year and did not know how to handle it.
Right.
And so 5 years later, he found himself in a world of hurt. What he talked about was some of the coping strategies that we're talking about right now, and what his journey was about, how people tried to support him, but he wasn't ready. And they didn't respect his need to sort of just be alone and figure it out. And sadly, he ended up in prison for for 7 years.
Wow.
And that's where he got healthy, and that's
Yeah.
where he found his sobriety and came out. And he's a wonderful man and a wonderful speaker and a wonderful role model now, but it was quite a journey for him. And he's still a young man. He's in his 30s. But
Happy that he found that. Not many do.
Yeah,
so.
it was really an interesting talk to hear that perspective. That need to be alone was definitely discussed, and we need to respect that.
Right.
So, how long have you been doing this work? Because you're brilliant at it, obviously.
Forever.
So we'll talk a little bit about how long we've been doing this line of work and what the role of the advocate is.
Great.
So I've been doing this kind of work for the last 21 years, and I would say it's a combination of providing information, educating your victim of their rights, providing that emotional support, helping file necessary paperwork depending on their needs. But most importantly, my role is not to tell a victim what they should or should not be doing or make decisions for them. I feel that our job is to provide them with options and let them make their own decisions.
I agree with you. I think that's a great philosophy. So, do you do any community education? Or is it mainly just working the one-on-one? You're going to talk about that,
Solange, you want to go ahead and give some insight on that?
Yes, we do. We'll get together and put...
Like a workshop together?
Yeah, like a workshop together.
Okay. With some community partners?
Actually, within our own agency and with some community partners as well.
So you're informing your colleagues.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's pretty important for them to understand what your work is so that when they're out and about and running into situations, they really can know what a great resource your department is.
And also for Victims' Rights Week in April of every year, we have a coalition. It's the Victims' Rights Coalition, 19th Judicial Circuit.
Okay.
And victim advocates from organizations, whether they be law enforcement or private nonprofits, we get together as a community and we put on different symposiums. We talk about victim issues. We have guest speakers to talk about community resources that are available.
We also did talk about substance use or misuse earlier, and I just want to throw in right now that if anyone is listening, turning to substances because of what's going on in their life and feeling like they need that kind of support, again, 211 is a wonderful resource in our community here in Port St. Lucie. Right Life Services was mentioned, and they are a wonderful connector to any kind of treatment, whether it be medically assisted, inpatient, outpatient. And then I am always available to direct people. My email is elyon, ELYON at careersourcerc.com, and I always put that out that I'm happy to use any of my contacts in the community to help somebody get information. So this is very challenging work. Do you have a story about somebody that you helped that keeps you motivated on tough days?
Oh, I would say in the 21 years that I've been doing this work, a lot of stories come to mind. Back in 2003, I had been on the job for approximately 2 years. I was the only Spanish-speaking advocate at the time, so I was asked to assist with an investigation. We had a case involving an adult Hispanic female who had gone missing. Her purse had been left behind and all her personal effects, which was not normal behavior. You know that women don't leave their purses behind.
No,
So.
They're attached to us.
Yes. Her family had informed us that she only spoke Spanish and she had only been in the country for 3 months. To make a long story short, for sake of time, she had been kidnapped, beaten, and raped across state lines and left in Georgia. A Good Samaritan in Georgia called law enforcement, and the next day she was transported back to St. Lucie County. Now, I cannot put into words the look of despair on this young woman's face the first day that I met her. She was treated at the hospital in Georgia as well as the hospital here. I was able to network. That's why networking is so important.
Yes.
I was able to network with other organizations in the area to get her into counseling right away. We also had nonprofit organizations that stepped up and helped her with immigration relief. And I mean, as you can imagine, we connect with victims, and sometimes that's a long-lasting connection.
Yes.
Years later, thanks to DNA, they were able to make an arrest on the case.
Good.
Yes. With extensive therapy and support, she was able to gain employment and she thrived. To this day, we still keep in contact. I'm so proud of her. She's married. She has a family. She's been with her employer for the last 12 years. She's a proud homeowner. She's like a true success story.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's so important for people to know that there is hope.
Yes.
There are resources and there are people that will help lift you up through the
Absolutely.
process to be able to come out on the other side and have quality of life. Solange, who are the most frequent victims?
Having to serve victims for the last 6 years, I would say women are definitely the most frequent victims, and men are the frequent batterers. Society has changed over time. We have seen a rise in male victims and female aggressors. However, statistics shows that men against women commits 95% of batteries. In my opinion, I feel it's a little inaccurate in numbers because men are much more reluctant to report abuse.
Oh, that is true. Again, the stigma, embarrassed.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, how could this happen to me? Nobody would believe me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because we want to encourage anybody to come forward who is in need of help.
Exactly.
So what are some of the common characteristics that are shared by domestic violence victims?
Some, not all, may abuse alcohol or other drug substances. Also, it's common for batterers to have the same substance abuse issues. Something very common is previous abuse. It could be prior abusive relationships or witnessed abuse in their home as children growing up. Fear of leaving, financially dependent, does not want to break up their home.
And we also don't want to leave out elder abuse. That's something we hear more and more about. People preying on elders in many cases for finances and kind of holding them captive if they've got some
exploitation.
means. And yeah.
And at the Sheriff's Office, we do have an exclusive economic crimes division that handles those type of cases.
Okay, so
on elder abuse, and we are very much involved in those as well in assisting those type of victims.
If someone is listening and would like to access help for yourself, a friend, coworker, or a family member, please think about 211. They are there 24/7. They don't provide direct services, but will connect you to appropriate resources in the community. You can dial 211 on your phone or go to 211.org, and I'm available at Lyon, ELYON, at careersourcerc.com. Do you have a closing thought that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Sure. Just remind them that it may be difficult for someone living with domestic violence to reach out for help, for a number of reasons. I just want to say that there is help. If you don't feel comfortable calling law enforcement, there's a National Domestic Violence Hotline, and I'm going to go ahead and share that phone number with you.
Okay.
It's 1-800-799-7233. Again, 1-800-799-7233. And there is also Safe Space, who is the only domestic violence shelter on the Treasure Coast, who not only provides shelter for women, but they also offer other programs as well. Their phone number is 772-464-4555, 772-464-4555.
And I believe that Safe Space, in some cases, it's safer for the victim and if they have children with them to be sent out of the area. I've heard about that. And so I think Safe Space can help with that as well.
They have shelters in Martin and
in various areas.
And Indian River.
Okay.
Where victims of domestic violence can go there with their children and get assistance.
Okay. And it's all very discreet and private, so we want to protect them as well when they do finally come forward.
Yeah.
So employment provides important structure as well as meaningful purpose for all people. For people in recovery, whether from substance use disorder or victimization, employment supports long-term recovery associated with better quality of life, greater self-esteem, and happiness. CareerSource Research Coast offers valuable tools for both the job seekers and employers. Employers are supported with hiring and training, and job seekers can explore in-demand career opportunities and receive support with job search, job readiness, and training. I want to feature and highlight that because if somebody is going through one of these scenarios and feeling like I can't leave because I don't have a job, or I won't be able to support myself, I won't be able to support my children, CareerSource is definitely there and available to help with that process, whether it be training or just getting somebody ready, thinking about their resume and what they've done previous in life and how they can be presented to a potential employer. So careersourcerc.com is the CareerSource website. That's careersourcerc.com. Also, Employ Florida. The Employ Florida website is a place where you can register as a job seeker and you put in a profile about yourself and you will be connected digitally or electronically to potential employers. Once you register in Employ Florida, somebody at CareerSource will reach out and help guide you through the process. We talked about you said where people can go to your facilities. Do you want to give addresses?
Sure. So we are located, as Solange mentioned, the Sheriff's Office. The address there is 4700 West Midway Road in Fort Pierce. The main phone number is 772-462-7300. And you can ask for victim assistance. And we have a victim advocate located at the courthouse. And that address is 218 South 2nd Street in Fort Pierce. That's in downtown. And the victim advocate there is located on the 3rd floor.
Great. Thank you so much. A huge thank you to my guests, and thank you for listening. Please tune in next month at 7:30 on November 28th to hear from staff from the Inner Truth Project speak about resources and support for victims of sexual trauma, which we spoke about tonight. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's a great follow-up next month to learn about their support services. And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.